And we're live.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Help AG's Security Spotlight Forum. It's a real pleasure to meet with you here today, even though it's from my home office. I'm sure that a lot of you are following this event from your home office. I'll be your host for the day. My name is Nicolai, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Help AG Middle East. I'm really delighted that in spite of the working situation that all of us are in, that we're still able to host the Security Spotlight Forums. And I'm also extremely happy to see how many of you actually took time out today in order to spend time with us here. Of course, I'm also looking forward for when we're able to meet you again in person, and I think we're fortunate to live in one of the countries in the world where we've spent the most time and effort to make sure that everyone is vaccinated, and I'm certain that we will very, very soon be able to also start hosting live events again. A little bit about the agenda. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about perimeter security in a perimeterless world and a perimeterless era, and what that means for organizations. After that, Fortinet is going to come in and talk about how their SD-WAN solutions is actually allowing you to maybe think about delivering WAN connectivity in a different way, both for your offices but also for your home users. That's followed up by Vectra. Vectra is an AI and machine learning powered platform which allows us to apply really, really advanced technology on large unstructured data sets, security traffic or network traffic, as well as events inside of cloud environments, so typically what you would call big data. And the definition of big data is, of course, that there's a lot of it, hence the word big, but also very often that it's an unstructured data set where you need that kind of AI and machine learning in order to make sense of that. And that's what Vectra have really been investing into with their platform. After that, we'll have a coffee break and some networking. I know that that's a difficult terminology when we're meeting here in the virtual world, but this platform that we have chosen to utilize here today does allow us to have meetings with you, and I hope that you have seen that you have an ability to go in and either book meetings directly with the vendors or with the business development managers from Help AG. That's really something that I hope that you can do. The coffee you'll have to provide by yourself, but I'm certain that that will work out that as well. After that, Sumit from Help AG, he's coming in and talking about how our SASE services is redefining how you think about your perimeter and how we can deliver advanced services from the cloud to our clients. He's followed by CrowdStrike, which is coming in and talking about the cloud-delivered EDR solution, which of course covers both your users on-prem, but also very much the users that you have sitting externally to your organization or at home. Then we have Keysight coming in and talking about visibility, not just in the form of the visibility that they deliver in data centers, but also in cloud as well as for your users at home. And then finally, to wrap it all up, we have FireEye who comes in and talks about their services when it comes to understanding the exposure that you have to risk in your environment. Something that's very important in this day and age where we've seen a number of different kind of events causing issues for clients. Good. If I'm a little bit distracted now, it's because we have a Teams channel going, and I just want to make sure that everything is working correctly. And I believe that is the case. So I will just carry on right now. To wrap everything up, we finish off with a panel discussion where I invited in the vendors, and Somya, our marketing manager, who's setting all of these fantastic events. She's promised to host a small Q&A session with all of us, and I've seen some of the questions and discussed some of the questions with her, and I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion about some of the changes that we're seeing happening at clients today. Good. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with Help AG Middle East. As all of you probably know, Help AG was acquired by Etisalat. That's about a year ago now. Actually, it was on the 17th of February, if I'm not mistaken, that it was announced that Etisalat had acquired 100% of Help AG. And since then, we've really been going from strength to strength. So today, we are the only 100% cybersecurity focused partner in the region, or at least the largest 100% cybersecurity focused partner. We still believe that cybersecurity is such a key element to any organization today as they go through digital transformation and other elements in their digital transformation journey, that cybersecurity is really a day zero job. Of course, we come with the experience of more than 25 years in the industry, where we just started off in Germany and then moved into the Middle East, and today we're a fully UAE and KSA-based organization, but with a lot of appetite for geographical expansion as well. We're about 230 employees. Actually, this number keeps increasing. I think it was last month or last quarter, we actually welcomed more than 30 new employees to the Help AG family, and that's of course a growth that we're very proud around. Today, about 500 clients do business with us, and we have about 20% of the market share of the cybersecurity market in the region. So this is something we're extremely proud around. We're of course also very proud about the awards and leadership recognition that we get from the industry. Probably the ones that we talk the most about right now is the IDC MarketScape, where Help AG has been placed as a leader. And I'm certain as we expand geographically that Help AG will be seen side to some of the large big five consultancy company in the region. Of course, our capabilities are underpinned by the relationship we have with our vendors, and here I'm very proud to say that Help AG continue to lead in this space, where both F5, Infoblox, Palo Alto, and other vendors they recognize us as some of the leaders in their portfolio. But also, if you look into the industry awards that we have received, I think that any customer should be should trust that we're able to deliver and exceed on your expectations to a cybersecurity partner. Good. So before we kind of kick off the presentation, I just want to take you through a little thought process, and that is, what if COVID-19, the pandemic, had happened 20 years ago, in the year of 2000? How would that have looked? Back then, mobile phones, they were not smart devices. They were just simple communication devices where you could place a call. If you were really lucky, you could also send an SMS, and even some phones that were created, they didn't even have SMS capabilities. We didn't have anything that was social media, and that's of course a concern in itself. I think social media, with all of the negative things we talk about social media and how it's regulated and all of these things, I have to say personally that my ability of staying in touch with family and friends during this was very much underpinned by the capabilities of social medias. Computers, they were typically very big boxes standing on a desk. Many of them were not even connected to the internet, and YouTube was just normal flow TV. The pandemic would have looked really different, not just to how we function as a society, but also how we were able to work and operate also in the settings of business. So I think technology is actually one of the things that really helped us. First of all, in controlling the pandemic, I think the vaccine rollout that we're seeing in the UAE right now is a very good example. I have never experienced a process that is so simple and friction-free, which still allows me to track what's happening all the way down the line because of the technology that's available today and because of how society has adopted that technology. We can work from at home. We can still have events like this, even in spite of the fact that we're all sitting in different locations in our home offices and all sorts of other places. And, I can tell you, even at the beginning of the pandemic, but also now, the fact that we can now do shopping online in a much more easy way is also something that has changed the way we work as society. And many of those changes will still persist even after we have the pandemic under control, so that we can choose how we work and how we play moving forward. Helbeji is a great example of that. And for instance, one of our office spaces there right now, we're turning into a video studio because we believe that we need a video studio more than we need physical office space. And I'm certain that the CFO sitting in every single company around the region that's thinking right now, how can they utilize real estate in a different way than they've been doing so far? This changes how we think of our office. The new office is our home. It's also very much different kind of locations. It can be next to our children. It could be in the kitchen. Maybe the devices that we're computing from is completely different compared to what they used to be. So all of these things are changing how we're thinking about the new office. And it's also changing security around that office. So where we used to bring users back home, now they're sitting in the office working instead. It's changing many elements of life. E-learning is an example. I think most of us would like to see our kids back in school, or most of us have seen kids coming back to school, and we've also faced some of the challenges in doing e-learning. But at the end of the day, it did work. And e-learning will allow learning to be available to people who did not have access to it in the past. Banking is another area where we're seeing a lot of innovation. I think financial industry is probably one of the areas where we see the most digital transformation being adopted right now. One of the reasons was that during the pandemic, the whole retail branch environment was simply unable to work in the way that they were expecting, and they had to move traffic and users over to the mobile platforms, and that has created a lot of innovation of how we see e-banking platforms. Government is operating in a different way. I just talked about the vaccine experience I had, and it's really a tremendous effort that I'm seeing there. Another thing is telemedicine. I'm unfortunate enough to have a hearing loss, and it means that it was now so bad that I had to get a hearing aid. And today, my audiologist, he can connect to my hearing aid remotely and tune it based on my input, and he's sitting many thousand kilometers away. That's all changing how people are utilizing these things. And telemedicine is, of course, going to change how we think about specialists, how we think about hospitals, and these kind of things. And one of the things that you, as organizations, as enterprises, need to expect is how remote working and collaboration is going to change, and how is that going to impact your organization. And that is one of the things that we're going to discuss a lot during the event today. So what is the things that really drives organizations today in changing how they think of cybersecurity technology? First of all, I talked a little bit about the remote distributed workforce. That's one main driver. It's also about connectivity, because as your users are sitting back home, you need to give connectivity to them in a different way, or you need at least to make sure that your applications is available in a very different way than they used to be. It also means that you're going to accelerate how you think about services that is not necessarily sitting in your own data center. Typically, what we call cloud services. We see many clients that during the pandemic started to move services over to cloud, and we're absolutely certain that that kind of move is going to happen in the future. As we see more and more of the hyperscalers being available here in the UAE, cloud is also going to be more and more acceptable from a data governance perspective than it used to be. And that's why we in Help AG, we're really investing heavily into our capabilities around delivering that secure cloud journey, something that I'm super happy to have a conversation with you in a separate track. Another area that we see a lot of concerns is really around data privacy and data security. When WhatsApp came out and created those new user regulations and new terms and conditions for the users, it created this massive offspring of really upset users who were saying, you know what, we're going to take our business elsewhere. We're going to utilize a different platform than WhatsApp to do our day-to-day messaging requirements. And I think that is a clear indication that users are starting to think about privacy in a very different way. So are they willing to give away their data in order to utilize a service? I am certain that this will be a business parameter for any organization in the future that is utilizing utilizing data in their day-to-day life. And understanding how that impacts your organization is, of course, very important, either because of you wanting to deliver a product and capability that's acceptable to consumers, but also sometimes the governance that you will have impacting your organization to deal with data. And then, of course, the final thing that we also see is this explosion of cyber security attacks. Unfortunately, while I would love to be able to say that the world is now a safer place, we see more and more advanced and more frequent cybersecurity attacks. Most recently, I think all of us were talking about SolarWinds and some of the issues around the supply chain of software vendors and how that was impacting our cybersecurity. COVID-19 was really this perfect storm for cybersecurity attackers or cyber attackers. I covered this slide last time, but fundamentally, when you change the way you are, the way you work, the way you play, and the way you live, that's really something that cyber attackers, they are really interested in, because they always find that soft spot where they can impact you. And COVID-19 was really good at doing that, because we didn't know anything about it. So it was really easy to get people to click on a link or open an attachment that they shouldn't have done. And we actually still see that. So today, many of the phishing campaigns that we're tracking in our Managed Security Services Center is really around that topic of COVID-19, typically themed about vaccines right now and not so much the pandemic itself. A fourth thing, which is also very important to understand, is that when your users move back home, their behavior is very different in a home office than in that corporate office. It could also be that they're utilizing a different device than they would have been doing in the office. And that's all something that you need to be aware about. And then finally, of course, the way you do business is also something that have changed. So it's really about how you had to adopt to e-commerce and different kind of channels to interact with your customers around. And of course, while that move has happened relatively frictionless from a user experience perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, it has actually created a lot of friction and a lot of challenges. That's something that we're tracking in our digital risk protection report that you can download from our website. So if you look at how we historically looked at networks, right, we would typically have a branch network. All of our users would be sitting in those branches, and they would be communicating typically through centralized internet breakouts from our headquarters. But today, what has happened is that, first of all, we have moved our applications into the cloud. Our branch offices maybe not necessarily need to connect to our headquarters anymore, because our main data center may not be in the headquarter anymore. It actually may be in the cloud environment. And that's why new ways of thinking about how we connect to those services is required. If you look at the perimeter of our network, where it used to be just a single location that we kind of had to ring fence and we would install all of our network equipment there, all of a sudden, the perimeter of our infrastructure needs to cover not just our headquarter, but also our branch networks, our remote home users, and also mobile device users, as well as those service and app environments that we have sitting outside in the cloud today. And that is something any organization needs to understand as they embark on these changes of how we do business and how we work in our organizations. So if you look at attacks from a little bit a different perspective, historically attacks, they were always on the service, right? So we saw attackers trying to look for vulnerabilities inside the applications, and they would try to get into data and inside the they would try to get through the data through vulnerabilities in those applications. But as cloud services and other services become more and more secure, what happened is that as our services became more and more secure, actually attacks, they started to hit the user as well as the identity of that specific user. And they did that still in order to get to the data in the environment. So the threats that we see today and the types of attacks we see today are very different than they used to be. And it also means that we need to change the defenses and how we think about those cybersecurity attacks. So what's really changing is that, first of all, the mode approach isn't relevant anymore. There's a completely new normal for endpoint security. Endpoint security is now probably one of your first defenses that you're looking at, also when you're looking at your home users and your remote users that's spread all over your organization, as well as remote offices and home locations. There's also a very big change in what we consider as security events and logs. As we move data into cloud, the way that we receive logs from our events are completely different. As we have users sitting from at home instead of in the office, looking at firewall logs in the central head office is no longer enough, right? You need to kind of get away where you get events from those endpoints and potentially even traffic logs in order to make sense of it all. Users, they will be connecting to untrusted networks in a very, very different way than they used to do. Another element here, which is also impacting us, is IoT. I think many users today, they're starting to think about how can they make their lives a little bit more smart. And that may also be by plugging in a smart power plug and other things, typically relatively low cost devices that can be produced from a supply chain which we may not be able to control. And all of a sudden your enterprise jewels, the home users' laptops and these kind of things, are sitting on the same network as a power plug that was produced on some kind of supply line which you did not control in the past. So all of a sudden, is that home Wi-Fi? Is that actually not an insecure network that you need to protect your users on? I also talked a little bit about the different online behavior when at home. Maybe users will open up web links that they didn't used to open up as they were in the office, or they may receive emails on their personal webmail that they are accessing through a web browser and potentially opening up attachment that they wouldn't have opened up in the past. Maybe that should be allowed instead of controlled. But then instead of that, you should think about how do you deal with the threat of all of that. There is also vulnerabilities still. So the apps that people are utilizing, they have vulnerabilities themselves. The apps that you're hosting also has vulnerabilities. And then finally, the last thing that's really changing everything for customers and organizations is this concept of a distributed perimeter, where your cybersecurity environment needs to not just handle what's happening in your central network, but also what's happening in cloud, as well as all of your remote locations, as well as your home users. Another very important element is how we think about data centers. So I think that what you will see is maybe not that on-prem data centers is a thing of the past, but at least they're going to be augmented by what we're doing in the cloud, which means that you don't need to just protect one data center. You actually need to protect multiple data centers. And that also means that you need to understand how do you make the most value out of those cybersecurity investments that you're doing. One of the ways that we can help you is by talking to you about SASE, or Secure Access Service Edge. That's really where we think about how do we utilize software-defined functions inside of a cloud-delivered capability to deliver some of the services that you would typically have historically looked at as an on-prem solution, or something that you would have inside of your data center. The benefits of SASE is really that it simplifies how you do stuff. It also allows us to deliver security at scale, which means that we have much better performance, both in the economics of these solutions, but also in how we deliver those solutions, because we don't have to go in and replace hardware or upgrade software in your environment when we want to add new features and functionality. And this basically leads up to a very high level of agility. My colleague Sumit will come in and talk to you about specifically what we're delivering in SASE. But since this is a remote user event and how we're talking about how do we also deal with remote users, I'm very happy to say that this does change how you should look at how do you connect your remote users into your environments. What happened when Help AG got acquired by Etisalat was that we became part of an organization which operates probably the largest IP backbone in the UAE, probably in the Middle East. And that means that we have the ability of utilizing that low latency IP backbone and compute resources that's sitting inside of Etisalat to deliver some of these security capabilities. And I think that's very, very unique to be able to go to customers and talk to them about how we can utilize that in the setting of SASE. One of the key things for us is that we maintain that the control and data planes are stored inside of the country, so that the organizations can trust these services, whether they're organizations that's coming from the government side or private organizations. Also be aware that as an organization operating in the UAE, it is your obligation to stay within the regulations of the country. And I think all of us are aware of some of the traffic filtering that's happening in the UAE. And if you utilize services that is bypassing you from that one while you're accessing those services in the country, you're actually in breach of those regulations. So we want to maintain that you are always in line with the regulations placed in the UAE. So as we get towards the end of my presentation, first of all, what is our experience in this area? We utilize remote work always. We've actually always seen that remote work has given us great productivity. We are what you would call an outcome-based organization, meaning that it's not the place you do your work that's important, it's the outcome of that specific work. But it also means that we think differently of our infrastructure. So how do we maintain that security no matter where our users are? How do we make sure that we have a remote and a robust remote infrastructure? And of course, one of the things that have happened for Help AG in the last couple of years is that we have utilized cloud more and more. And one thing that's very important to understand is that digital transformation really starts at the home office. Good. I'm a little bit late on time, so I've just took the liberty of skipping a few slides. So one of the key takeaways is really, and if you want to just take away one element from the presentations here today, I hope that all of you will understand that assessing the robustness of your remote work environment is really, really important. We can help you in assessing your endpoints as well as your employees, because by building smart digital citizens, you actually end up with a much, much better approach to dealing with modern cybersecurity attacks. Good. That was what I was planning to talk to you about today. I'm now really, really happy to hand over to Fortinet, who will talk about enterprise security without compromise. I do know that they're going to talk about some of the SD-WAN capabilities that they have in their platforms. I think Fortinet has been really, really good at being able to position their next generation firewall platforms to also be able to deliver SD-WAN capabilities distributed within the infrastructure. And with that, I am looking forward to seeing you later on for the panel.